Hi, boys and girls. We're back in social studies with the study of the five main world religions. And so I put them on the list up here: Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism. And those are not in the order of their origination, but they are just a list of the five main world religions. And today's question, I ask you, what does monotheistic mean? What does polytheistic mean? And to give some examples. So monotheistic means one, and that means the belief in one God. And so the three main monotheistic religions and the ones that we're studying for the next couple weeks would be Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I say that in the order because that's the order of their origination when they began. Judaism is the oldest, and they don't have many people compared to Christianity and Islam, and we'll look at the chart in a second, but they are the basis for those two religions. So Christianity and Islam both come out of Judaism and form from there because all three of those religions believe in the one same God. They call him different names, they have different words for him, but it is the same God. And then we have the polytheistic. Poly means more than one. You know polygon from math. And the two that we'll be studying in this class are Hinduism and Buddhism. And so that's the answer for today. If you need to fill that in and make some changes, go ahead. Today's agenda is pretty simple. Just remember to please bring religion packets home, those comparison charts and that packet that you got yesterday and that you wrote on. Bring it home for tomorrow. You will need it for your Wednesday work, and then bring it back for Thursday because you'll need it then as well. So I just want to get out of here really quick, and I showed you this the other day, and I was ahead of myself because I was thinking about just the monotheistics, but thinking about all these different world religions, we can see that Christianity, Islam, and then Judaism right here. Judaism is 0.2%, okay, of the world. And so why are we studying that compared to Christianity and Islam? Well, because like I just said, Judaism is the basis for Christianity and Islam. Those two religions come from Judaism. And so it is an important religion. A lot of facts and information and basis for their beliefs come out of Judaism. And so we want to study that world religion and get to know those beliefs. And so then, and to do this, boys and girls, we have so much to cover. We have so much to say about religions. I don't know. I've been struggling, honestly, how to present these huge ideas and beliefs to you in just a few class periods. And how can I do it over a video when I can't ask you about things that you know? I can't ask you about people that you know that might have these beliefs. We can't have this dialogue and interaction. And so it's very hard to convey these ideas and beliefs about very important topics for people about religion without having more of an intimate relationship and more time. People take an entire lifetime to study these religions, and we're going to try and cover them in 2 class periods. It's a crazy idea, but it will introduce you and get you the basic information. It will make you familiar with some terms. It will hopefully open your eyes to other beliefs and ideas and just the thought of learning more about the world. Because some of these religions aren't practiced so much in our area in the United States, but they are in the rest of the world. So as you become more worldly people, as you travel more, as you go to different parts of the United States, even truly, you might at least have some basis for some other beliefs and religions. So we're starting off with Judaism because it is the oldest, and the other two monotheistic religions, Christianity and Islam, have their basis in Judaism. So we're starting with Judaism because of that. And we can see on the chart here, and I'm using this PowerPoint as a way to keep me on track, to try not to divulge too much to the edges and the sides and the details. But Judaism is old, about 3,500 years ago. So BCE, before Common Era, God comes to Abraham, and for the first time that we know of, a monotheistic religion is recorded. We don't know. Before that, there are definitely signs of religion with humans, but it's polytheistic. So the idea of one God comes to Abraham, any God comes to Abraham, and he tells him things. God says, "You if you take you and your people to this area that I've set aside for you, Canaan, then good things will happen to you. And so Abraham does this. He takes his people to Canaan and they go there, and it is on a map that we will see in the next video. And then this is the area by what is now Israel and the Mediterranean Sea. And then they're there for a while, and then there's a famine, and they have to move on. The people have to move, so they go to Egypt. So they're heading further, and in Egypt things are good for a while, but then they become enslaved by the Egyptian people. And so these are God's chosen people. God came to Abraham and said, "You are my people," and so they're enslaved now by the Egyptians. And you may know the story of Moses. You can see Moses is listed here. He's one of the important figures of Judaism, and Moses is actually a slave. He is born to a gal, and she is afraid he'll be killed, so she sends him down the river in a basket. And one of the princesses of the Egyptian people she finds a basket, and she raises Moses as her own. And in this, Moses becomes he becomes part of the elite, and he becomes part of the high level people, and he ends up being the person that gets the Jews out of Egypt. He allows them to be able to get out. There are plagues, and this is getting too much detail. I know the plagues come. Maybe you saw this, and you maybe heard of this when you had lessons around, well, I'm going to say Easter, but that has to do with Christianity because these are intermingled. And so Moses leads the people out of Egypt. He allows them to get out, and it comes with the 10 plagues, and it comes with Passover. But they do leave, and then they wander in the desert, because there's a story there about wandering in the desert. And through time, we know that even we studied the Persians, the Persian leader, we know him to be Cyrus the Great. There are people they're the Jews at that time are exiled and they're held captive. And once once Cyrus conquers that area, he allows the Jews back out and to go back to where they want to go with their temple. And because remember that Cyrus allowed people to practice their own religions and to do their own beliefs, but he did ask them to pay taxes, of course. So I'm getting sidetracked, going to go back on course. And we can see that Abraham and Moses are two very pivotal people in Judaism. Abraham gets a direct message from God to move his people to a land that's been promised to them. And then Moses gets them out of slavery, out of bondage, and gets them out of Egypt and moves them past that. Moses also gets the 10 Commandments from God. So you may have heard of that story before, and the 10 Commandments are important in the monotheistic religions, and those are given to Moses from God. And so we're not going to get into the whole story of that because we're moving forward. So currently there are 13 million Jews in the world. Judaism is a religion. If you are a Jew, that means you practice Judaism. So that would be the term. And then Judaism is a religion, but it's also considered like a family, a social group, a network, a support system. Let's see, a couple important terms to know here. And are there more important terms? Sure. But these are a couple that we're just going to touch on. So when you hear these, you will know that they are associated with Judaism. The Torah is the most important religious text of Judaism. Okay. The synagogue is the place where Jews go to worship. A rabbi is a person trained that has some information and has some ability to lead, but may just be a consultation person. There may not be the person that always leads a ceremony, but they are a rabbi and they are a spiritual leader. And the Sabbath is the special day of the week in which Jews mark that off as the day to give back to God and to say, I will worship you, I will pray today, I'm giving special thanks to you today. And that goes from Friday through Saturday. Okay. Let's see. These are some important holidays for the Jews. Now, again, we are just touching the surface of some of these important days, and we're not getting into the details of what they celebrate on each of these days. These days are very meaningful for the Jewish people, And so I want you to hear them and see them, but know that we are not spending a lot of time on getting to know these different important dates and holidays. So Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year. Okay, so they celebrate a new beginning and a new start. Yom Kippur is the most important, holiest day for the Jews. It is very serious. It is a day spent with some fasting and deep prayer and reflection of the past year. So it's a very important day for the Jews. It's highly religious day. Okay, and then if we're moving down, we can see Sukkot is right there, and that is something we didn't get into, but it's when the Jews are out of Egypt and Moses leads them and they're wandering in the desert. Passover happens. We talked about that with Moses and the slavery related to Egypt. And then Hanukkah is usually, that overlaps near Christmas for Christians, and it is about when the Jews did not run out of the gas they needed to light their lanterns, even though they were under siege in Jerusalem. And so it is a day that they remember, or a time period that they remember relating to that siege of Jerusalem, a very holy city. Well, notice that Jerusalem comes up in all three monotheistic religions. It's a very holy place. We're not going to do that this year. And then the important text, we are really focusing more on the Torah. And that is the first part of the Jewish Bible. It's extremely sacred. It's never edited. This one is a little more controversial, and we're not going to talk about that. But the Torah is also the Old Testament of the Christian Bible. So the Christian Bible has the Old Testament and the New Testament, and Mrs. Berry will be talking to you about that. But the Torah is the very important Jewish text, extremely sacred, never edited, never changed. It is what it is, and they use that to guide their beliefs and to guide their actions. Okay. So these are some overlying Jewish beliefs. Boys and girls, you cannot summarize a religion on one slide. It seems silly to even try to do this, but I'm not sure how else to do it. So let's take note that the Jews have a relationship with God that is like a contract or a covenant, a promise back and forth. It is a promise to each other. The Jews agree to keep God's laws, especially the Ten Commandments, to bring holiness and reverence to aspects of their life, to try to do the right thing according to the Torah, and then to have a community and relationship with God. And so those are the things, if we had to summarize things down, that's how that would summarize down. Pretty crazy to put it all on one slide, but we're trying to just keep it shorter. Okay, so we're not going to do that right now. We're going to move on to... So boys and girls, if you could go back to your chart right now, I asked you to have it out. You've already filled this part out. You've already done all of this. Oh, actually, I could just go over there. You already wrote all of these things right here. Who the five main religions, we said that Judaism is monotheistic, Christianity is monotheistic, Islam is monotheistic, Hinduism and Buddhism are polytheistic. Mono means one, poly means many. We're trying to answer the questions of the world. That is why religions have been used by people, is to try to answer the questions of the world. We gave some ideas. Right here we gave some main questions. And we want to know that we're studying these things because we're humans, and humans are thinkers, and we want to have a better understanding of our world and of the people of our world. So having said that, we're moving on. And so if you can go down to, I know, every time, right? Every time. But anyways, if you could move down to this part of your chart, please, and have a pencil out, I'll meet you back. So boys and girls, I asked you to have this part of your packet out, please. This is the one that is Judaism right here. We're going to fill in this comparison chart so we can use it as a way to be able to say what are some similarities with the other religions that we're studying, and a way to keep track of all the facts, because it can get confusing. So these columns will be the same for all of the religions. And the first column right here is the belief system name, which we filled in for you. Judaism right here. And then it asks for the amount of followers. How many people say that they're a Jew? And that answer right now is about 13 million. And that's worldwide, so across the world. And then it says, where's the largest percentage of followers today? Where do most of them live? And most of the Jews, the largest concentration is Israel, which is a country near the Mediterranean Sea. And you probably have heard about it in the news lately. I don't know what's happening right now. I'm recording this in advance, so I'm not going to speak on it exactly. But the Gaza Strip and Israel are having conflict right now, which has gone on for many, many years. And so that may be still part of the news. I don't want to say anything because, like I said, I'm doing this in advance, so I'm not sure what's going on right now. So let's go ahead and write this down. Israel, which was the country created for the Jews to have their homeland, their sacred spot after World War II in 1948. So you can see that. I hope you can see on the screen okay. It may be a little small. Israel was created in 1948 after World War II as a place for the Jews to have their own sacred spot. It's a long history as to why that is. We didn't get into those details of the history, and we're not in this class. We are going to touch on some things on Friday relating to World War II and the Holocaust and Hitler a teeny bit. Okay, last year you would have studied that in 6th grade, and of course you didn't get the chance because we left school early. So we wanted to touch on that in this class. And then the last part of it was how old is it? How long has it been in existence? And that is 3,000 or more plus years, almost 3,500. So 3,000 plus years it has been in existence. The oldest, you may want to add that in, oldest, monotheistic. And then the name of the God, polytheistic or monotheistic, we've already said a couple of times, but it's good to write it down again, that Judaism is monotheistic. I feel like I should make this a little bigger. Sorry. There we go. Okay. And then what do the Jews call their God? The one God comes and talks to Abraham, and that is what all three monotheistic religions believe. Jews call that God Yahweh. Oops. And Yahweh, oh my goodness gracious, me and the computer. Okay. I'm going to make it a little larger and then make it so you can see it. Yahweh. 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 Who was the founder and the location of the original, of the location of the beginning, the origin, and the start date. And so we are going to note that Abraham and Moses are given credit for being the founders of this religion. We kind of talked about that. Abraham, God came to Abraham. I was in Mesopotamia actually at that time, and he says, I am one God, believe in one God, tell people about one God, and then move your people to this spot over here, Canaan, that's the chosen area for you. Go there and good things will happen. Moses is the leader who takes them out of Egypt when they are enslaved, and he goes with them into the desert. Okay, and he gets the 10 Commandments. Moses gets the 10 Commandments from God. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and say it started around 1950 BCE, before Common Era, so a long time ago. That means it is the oldest of the monotheistics. I can see that I'm slow on this computer, but I also know that you guys are writing. So I'm happy to be slow so that you guys have a chance to write these. Oh boy, I knew that was going to happen, right? So you guys have a chance to write these in. You should know that Judaism was founded by Abraham and Moses. They're two of the most important. There are many more important people, you guys. We're summarizing this down to a class period. So Abraham and Moses, two of the most important, started around 1950 before Common Era, oldest of the monotheistics. That's why we're studying it first. It is the basis for Christianity and Islam. Their sacred text is called the Torah. And so you want to write that down. Put that in the area for the sacred text. It is also the first 5 books of the Bible, the Old Testament of the Bible. So we can see that overlap again between the religions. Okay, the Torah is also the first 5 books of the Bible. And what is the place called where Jews worship? It is called a synagogue. That is the place that they go for worship, a synagogue. And it's going to go to 2 lines. It's really one word because I'm making it large. I'll spell it out loud for you. Oh, that's funny. Okay, it is spelled Synagogue. That is one word that got split because of the column. I don't want to make that bigger because that'll mess up everything else. So it's a synagogue. You probably have heard that term before. Maybe you didn't realize it belonged to Judaism. Who are the leaders? Rabbi. If you've ever heard the term rabbi, maybe you've just heard it in a movie. That could be true. I don't know. But a rabbi is a religious person in the Jewish community. They are educated in the law and the tradition, and they would have a working knowledge of the Torah. You might have heard of different branches of Judaism, and that would be Orthodox and Reform. We're not getting into why there are 2 different branches, but it's suffice to know that there are different branches. I know you're writing. Thank you for writing so much stuff. It will go in your brain as you're writing, and you're looking, and you're hearing. Now, the crazy part, to put the beliefs of an entire religion, thousands of years old, in a teeny tiny column with a couple of bullet points. Feels awkward to do that and to say that, but that's what we're doing today, in a way just to kind of increase our knowledge. So, what are the basic beliefs? There's one God. One God. With this God, the people have an agreement, a covenant, an agreement with God. The Jewish people have a promise with this one God, a relationship. Okay, that's very important to the Jews. They are to live a moral life by following the 10 commandments and the Torah. Okay, so how do you live a moral life? You follow the Torah, the writings in there, and you follow the 10 commandments. We will cover the 10 commandments later. You may know of some of them. 10 commandments will come later. A belief in one God, a covenant with God, on a promise, an agreement, back and forth. They're to live a moral life, to try and make the right decisions, to make good decisions as according to the 10 commandments and according to the Torah. And what is a symbol for Jews? It is the Star of David. So is the menorah, actually. But the Star of David is the one that you usually see more associated with the Jews. So and that was on our opening slide right here. This is an example of the Star of David. Okay, so I'm going to go back to your chart right here and leave this up for a second. Of course, teachers, you know the routine. If you need to pause for a second, hopefully I went slow enough to get this down. If you want to draw a Star of David in there, please go ahead and do so. And then when you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and play a Hip Hughes video. It is also linked in Teachers as a separate link in case it doesn't play well through Screencastify, but it will be available as a link on the agenda today as well. Boys and girls, again, thank you for going through this with me. I don't want to downplay the significance of religions by covering it in a day, but I think that you guys are starting to understand some of the basic beliefs of Judaism and to understand a tiny bit about this religion. We'll continue on Wednesday with doing something from your packet, so bring that home. Thursday, you'll have an activity that it's actually going to kind of talk about all the religions again. It'll be a short lesson because we have M-Step. And then Friday, we'll continue on with some modern day situations with Judaism. So I'll meet you back on probably, I'll see you Wednesday or Friday. Thank you.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History, World History Edition. We're going to go get another world religion under our belts today. This time the very basics and history of Judaism, so you can walk around Earth a little bit smarter and you'll pass your exams. How about that? So why don't we go get ready to grow our brains together and go giddy up for the learning right about now. All right, guys, some very basics about Judaism. It's a rather minor religion. There's only about 0.2% of people on earth that consider themselves to be of the Jewish faith. That's about 14 million people, and 42% of them today live in the country of Israel, which you can see is on the eastern Mediterranean. And I'm going to call that Canaan many times. Canaan. There's the word right there, because that's the ancient word that refers to the land that the Jewish people believe was promised to them in what they call the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. We should get started off by saying that the reason we are studying a little bit about Judaism here, even though it's a very small religion in terms of numbers, is because it's very influential, not only in terms of kind of Western civilization and their outlook on God and such, but really it is going to be the roots of not only Christianity, but also Islam. So the 2 biggest religions on earth have their roots in the history that we're going to go over in a moment. Now, even though we're going to be talking about Canaan or Israel, sometimes called Palestine or ancient Palestine, and again, this is Eastern Mediterranean, holy crossroads Batman. I mean, if you go to the west, you're in Egypt, and if you go into the east, you're like in Mesopotamia and Babylonian. So this is at the center crux of early civilizations, really a trading crossroads at the end of the day. But we have to start by saying that Judaism, or the Hebrew people, does not originate in Canaan. It actually originates in the city of Ur in ancient Mesopotamia. If you want to watch a video on Mesopotamia, you can click in the description below and learn all about Mesopotamia. And another thing that we should probably mention is that much of what I am going over comes from the first 5 books of the Bible. So in terms of historical accuracy, maybe not. That's going to be up to you, the viewer. So a lot of what we're talking about is what people believe. That's what a religion is, right? It's their faith. So whether it really happened or really didn't, we're going to leave that up to you, the viewer, to decide for themselves or do your own research. But nevertheless, if we go to the city of Ur in ancient Mesopotamia, there's a guy around 2000 BCE by the name of Abraham. And the story in Genesis, the first 5 books of the Bible, the first one is Genesis, is that Abraham was contacted by God himself. And that's the first kind of rule in Judaism and Christianity and Islam. There's only one God, and he goes where you go, right? And he's ever knowing and ever watching. He's everywhere. It's not like many of the polytheistic religions of Mesopotamia where gods are location orientated. They're polytheistic. So that's the first definition really of these 3 big religions in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. That's monotheistic, that everything derives and comes from one God. There's no any other gods. There's just one. And they're going to call him in the Jewish faith, in Judaism, Yahweh. So instead of God, I'll say Yahweh because that's what the word is, and you should know what the word is. But nevertheless, Abraham makes a deal, a covenant with God. And why don't we just listen to God?
Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great.
That's the first thing God says to Abraham. It's a covenant. It's a deal that if you listen to me, if you follow my rules, if you pray to me and worship me and honor me, then I'm going to give you really great land, and your descendants are going to rule over that great land. That's the deal. You do what I say. I give you this land, which is going to be Canaan, which eventually we're going to call Israel, which people also refer to as ancient Palestine. And that is at the root of Judaism. It's a covenant. It's a deal. And Abraham is tested. There's the story of his son. Remember, he had 2 sons to begin with, and that's Ishmael and Isaac. Now, Ishmael, who is the son of Hagar, who is Abraham's slave, is going to be the descendant of the people that are going to form Islam. And of course, Isaac is going to be the descendant that continues with this covenant and eventually into Israel. But in terms of testing the covenant, God actually in the Old Testament asks Abraham to kill his son Isaac. You got to kill your son Isaac to show how much you're going to listen to me. And right before he kills him, God's like, psych, right? He says, I'm an angry God. I'm a jealous God. I'm also a merciful God. I'm not going to have you kill your son. Another sign of this covenant is in the Old Testament, in the Torah, that it demands that sons of the Jewish faith are circumcised. You can go Google that if you don't know what it is, but that is supposed to be the flesh sign that I am one of these people that has made this deal with God. Now you have to remember that Abraham, the dude was 75 years old. He didn't have any children. So as part of this deal, he's got to make babies. And that's what happened. He made babies. And he leaves he leaves Mesopotamia with his new tribe, with his new people, and he starts traveling to the land of Canaan, to Israel, to Palestine. And the story is that for many years they wander trying to find their way. Eventually they find their way, but then they leave that area, the descendants of Abraham, because the land was arid and dry. There was supposedly famine and starvation. And they went across the Red Sea to Egypt to settle. And that's where we're going to leave our story right now, because at first they were welcomed. The Egyptians were like, hey, Jewish people, Hebrews, come on over. Nice to have you. But eventually they're going to become slaves, and there's going to have to be a way for these slaves to get out of Egypt. So why don't we take a look at that right now? So now we're in Egypt, the Hebrew tribe. They are slaves in Egypt. It's around 1300, 1200 BCE. Don't quote me, guys. But the Pharaoh of Egypt at that point decided that he didn't want the Jewish people around anymore. He was feeling threatened by these Hebrews. And basically what occurs is that there is one baby, Moses. He's put on the Nile by his mother and kick the basket down. And eventually he's found by an Egyptian princess who raises him in luxury. And eventually, as Moses gets into adulthood, God's going to point to him to be the leader of the Hebrew people, to lead them out of Egypt. So I guess when God asks you to do something, if you're Moses, you do it. And Moses, who was still connected with his Hebrew faith, takes the Jewish people and leads them into the Sinai Peninsula, leads his people into the desert, heading back towards the land they call Israel, where they're supposed to go make their kingdom. And we haven't mentioned this, but in the Jewish faith, there is a belief that one day a Messiah will come and unite the Jewish people in the kingdom of Israel. And this Messiah will rule over Israel and create peace on earth. And this is the differentiation they have with Christians. Christians believe that Messiah was in Jesus Christ. Jewish people say, no, there was no united kingdom with peace on earth, so he was a prophet, he was not the Messiah. And of course, there's differing beliefs among different Jews about Jesus, but that's the basic plot. If you're a Jewish person, you believe that Jesus was a great prophet, but he was not the Messiah that was mentioned in the Old Testament. Jewish people are still waiting for that Messiah to come to bring peace to earth. But I get off track because something happened. When Moses was leading his people according to the Old Testament in the Sinai Peninsula, there's Mount Sinai, and Moses decided to go up and pray and such, and he finds these two huge tablets. And they're very important because they're going to make the formation of the 10 Commandments, which is really at the root not only of the Jewish faith, but of the Christian faith, of the Islamic faith in a sense, and of Western civilization in a sense. So we should probably say something about the 10 Commandments. And this is part of that covenant. You follow these 10 Commandments, and I'll give you the kingdom, I'll give you peace on earth, right? I am a jealous God, I'm a mean God, but I'm a merciful God. I'll give you stuff if you do what I say. So here are the 10 Commandments, and if you're Jewish or if you're Christian, you probably should be checking these off as I go through them. Now, the first 4 deal with your relationship with this one God, and the other 6 deal with your relationships with other people as you're walking around on earth. So we can see the first one is, I'm a jealous God, no other gods before me. That's number 1. You don't pray to any other gods. Number 2 is no graven imagery. There should be no representation of any idols that anybody's praying to, any type of symbols or anything like that, because God's a jealous God. He doesn't want you wearing those things or praying to other things, because the God is not a physical according to monotheism in the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, and the Islamic faith, but it's a spiritual realm. So there should be no images, graven images of this one God. Number 3, you can check this off if you believe you deserve so, but there should be no use of God's name in vain. And number 4 is to keep the Sabbath holy. Now, Christians, many people might be Christians out there, that's Sunday, but for Jewish people, that is sunset from Friday until Saturday evening. That's the day you're not supposed to work. You're just supposed to worship and pray to God. There's a lot of tradition in the Jewish faith. There's a lot of symbology, a lot of lighting of candles, a lot of recitations that is meant to keep that covenant, to worship that one God, so that one God will keep rewarding you. That's the main idea. Now, the other 6 deal with how you deal with other people. Number 5 is honor your mother and father. So if you're spatting with your mom and dad, you're giving them grief, you're breaking the covenant with God. That's not a good thing. Number 6 is pretty simple. Thou shalt not kill. Number 7, thou shalt not commit adultery. I guess you can go Google that. No, don't Google that. Number 8 is going to be thou shalt not steal. That's pretty straightforward. Number 9 is thou shalt not bear false witness against my neighbor. And number 10 is I shall not covet anything of my neighbor's. I shall want anything just because my neighbor has it, right? So that whole thing, keep up with the Joneses, not so good according to the 10 Commandments. But that is the covenant that the Hebrew people make with God. That Moses brings these 10 commandments down from Mount Sinai and says to the people, we need to follow these 10 commandments. Now, the story after that is that Moses and the Hebrew people wander the desert for like 40 years before they eventually are going to settle in the land they call Israel, ancient Palestine. You can see it on the map right there. And because that land is so geographically not so nice, they're going to quite quickly begin to expand their kingdom. Now, there were 12 tribes of the Hebrew people. The largest of those tribes is the tribe of Judah. So that is where we get the name Jewish. But there were 12 tribes. And if you look at the old Bible, there's numerous judges that are brought up to unite the tribes. One of the more famous one is actually a woman, Deborah, but we should mention that, like other faiths, women were seen as below men in a sense. They're basically kept underneath men to deal with the house stuff and the raising of the kids and the making of the babies and such like that. Of course, we're not talking about modern times. There's many different modern interpretations, but of course, in terms of a paradigm of how civilization forms, women are definitely not at the forefront, and that's not just in Judaism. And like we've mentioned, these judges are going to be able to unite the Hebrews, the 12 tribes, including the largest ones, which are the Jewish people, which is going to create the kingdom of Israel. There was a kingdom of Israel. I'm telling you there was, but it's not going to be around for very long. I'm going to get the kingdom of Israel. I'll be right back. So Abraham made a deal with Yahweh, and God made him the promise that his descendants would rule over this new kingdom, the kingdom of Israel. And about 1020 BCE to around 922 BCE, that actually occurs. The kingdom of Israel is going to be in that Canaan land, and 3 kings are going to rule over it. And historically, this is true. There is Saul, there is Saul's son-in-law David, and then there's Solomon. These are the 3 kings of Israel. And it was David which really is going to take Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is going to be a very important city in Israel. Now, we also, of course, have Solomon. And one of Solomon's great accomplishments is that he's going to build Solomon's temple. And Solomon's temple is which is going to hold, if you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Ark of the Covenant, which keeps in the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments, which is the representation of this covenant between man and God on earth. How about that? You should go watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's pretty awesome. Now, I don't want to give away the goose here, but Solomon's temple is not standing today. That's because it's going to be burned down about 400 years after it was built. And the building of Solomon's temple is going to divide the kingdom of Israel. There were high taxes, there was forced labor, people aren't happy. It's not so good. So we're going to get two kingdoms: in the north, the kingdom of Israel; in the south, the kingdom of Judah. And it's that disunity, that weakness, that eventually is going to lead to their invasion and their conquering. So from about 922 BC to about 738 BCE, we have these two kingdoms that are a little bit vulnerable, and I hear some wolves, and they're coming for Israel. So around 783 BCE, there's a new empire. They're called the Assyrians, and they're starting to look at Israel with some greedy eyes. So both the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah began paying tribute to Assyria around 783 BCE. Around 725 BCE, the Assyrians didn't think that was enough, so they're going to have this siege at Samarra, which is the capital of Israel, and that's going to be successful, and the Israeli kingdom is going to fall. Now, the kingdom of Judah is going to last about another 150 years, but around 600 BCE, they're going to fall to the Assyrians as well. Now, the Assyrian Empire is quickly going to be evaporated by the Babylonian Empire. And around 586 BCE, that Babylonian Empire is going to capture Jerusalem, and they're going to take down the temple at Solomon, which housed the Ark of the Covenant. Raiders of the Lost Ark, I'm telling you, you should watch it. And they're also going to take the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, and they're going to exile them to Babylon. And in the Bible, it says that the prophet Ezekiel is supposed to keep the Jewish faith alive as this exile occurs. Now, the exile is not going to last forever. Around 539 BCE, there's going to be a new king in town. This time it's the Persian king Cyrus the Great. And Cyrus the Great is going to give permission for about 40,000 of those exiles to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the Temple of Solomon. And eventually that's going to be destroyed again. But it is at that second Temple of Solomon where we get that tradition of Hanukkah. It's called the Maccabean Revolt. And the idea was that the Jewish people were in this Temple of Solomon, and they only had enough oil for their candles for a day, but somehow the magic oil lasted for 8 days, and that's where you get the menorah with the 8 candles. Each one represents a day, and there's a magic candle they all light the other candles with. But that's about it, guys, for Judaism. We got the very basic beliefs down. There's one God. It's monotheistic. They believe there's a special covenant with their one God, and they will be rewarded eventually with a Messiah that returns to rule over Israel and brings peace to earth. That's the main idea. And the last thing I'll say, guys, is holy smokes, we've only scraped the surface. It's like that much? You only know like that much? There's so much more that you should probably find out. So go research, go read, go grow your brain on your own. And if you want to know a little bit more about the conflict that becomes known as the Arab-Israeli conflict, we have a video for you right there. It's down in the description below. So if you feel like it, you can go get her done too. I hope your brain's a little bit bigger. I hope when you're walking around, you know what you're talking about. And I hope you always remember, where attention goes, energy flows.